Generally, it takes a long time to get recent 4 stars to C6, largely due to the chance of getting 7 copies of said unit being fairly low. You think HOYO is ever going to introduce a 4-star guarantee system?
You serious?
Despite this, I got C6 IFA a while ago, and I thought he'd be perfect as the next character to work out in the video. As far as I know, he's pretty underutilized, though there have been quite a few recent videos on him. But the reasons for his underutilization will become extremely apparent soon. That said, let me explain his kit. His normal attack has a 3-part combo string where he fires multiple shots from his pistol. Using his skill puts him in Nightsoul state where he flies by hanging on to Kukuku while raining fire on any unfortunate enemy nearby, with each shot healing the party. As a result, it fires another, you guessed it, bullet that groups enemies and applies a damage dealing mark to opponents affected by a swirl element. Ideally, you want to use this directly after you end your skill or before you start it so as to not waste time you could be firing in your skill, though there will be situations where you'll want to actually fire in the middle of your skill. In the event, you have to adjust for the enemy. One cool thing to note is that IFA has multiple instances of hyper armor motions in this kit. Hyper armor motions are animations where the character can't be as easily staggered. These are different from iframes, as in the case of those, you don't take damage during the duration of the animation with iframes, whereas for hyper armor motions, you'll still take damage. In IFA's case, as he transitions from being on the ground to flying in the air with Kukuku, I found that attacks which would normally stagger him wouldn't during this animation, which I abused on multiple occasions to do some specific interactions with Jean's ult. IFA also can't be easily staggered out of either of his plunging animations, which is also useful to note. Though I think most, if not all, characters can't be knocked out of their plunge animation. Now that you have a good idea of what his kit does in general, let's move on to how you can play it. There are 2 main ways to play IFA. You either use him as an electrocharge driver or as an Anemo main DPS. Unfortunately, it's pretty clear that HOYO really only wanted players to play him as an electrocharge driver due to the nerfs during the beta before IFA's release, which I'll get back to in a bit. For the Anemo main DPS route, there's some curious things about how IFA's kit interacts with attack speed. He benefits from it by being able to shoot more bullets during his skill. In my testing with C6 active on IFA, he's able to fire 11 skill bullets at 0 attack speed, but 14 with 15% attack speed. These numbers are assuming an average amount of C6 procs, and the number of bullets I'm counting are not including the extra ones from his C6, and you'll see why I do this in the later section of the video. However, going beyond 15% attack speed doesn't seem to net much of a gain. From my limited testing on stream, it seems like you only get 1 more skill bullet going from 15 to 25% attack speed, which in my opinion isn't worth sacrificing a character slot for the extra attack speed unless it gains some other kind of benefit. Since your main source of damage here is Anemo, buffers like Faruzan and C4 Jean are extremely good as support. Outside of those two, one of the more sleeper OP supports for IFA in this playstyle is Yunjin. Yunjin's normal attack buff increases IFA's main source of damage significantly and provides extra attack speed buffs on top of that if you have her C6. One of the more powerful core setups for IFA is with Faruzan and Yunjin together, along with a flexible 4th slot, ideally someone that has a swirlable element so more damage can be dealt, say something like Farina. The best weapons for this kind of playstyle come in the form of Tula's Remembrance and Cash Flow Supervision, only if you have Farina in the party. I unfortunately don't own either of these weapons, and so I had to resort to something else, which I'll explain more in the team building section of the video. Speaking of team building, I didn't use the aforementioned core setup for my clear. This is because I don't own C6 Yunjin, and I also failed to get a good set of 4-piece Desert Pavilion to make use of his attack speed quirk. I thought it would be really lame to mention a piece of tech and not use it for the character I'm mentioning for, so you'll see that I had to make some adjustments to the overall team composition. But I'll save that for the team building section later. For now, let me move on to discuss how he works as an electrocharge driver. The driver playstyle doesn't vary much in general. You stack full EM, you give the driver an EM weapon, and you're on your merry way. That's pretty much true for IFA here as well. His artifact set is pretty much set in this kind of team setup, being 4-piece Viridescent. It's generally not good to have another Anemo character in the party due to the opportunity cost of not having another Hydro and or Electro character instead. By far, Auroran is the best partner in crime for this playstyle with IFA. IFA gains more electrocharge benefits with a character with access to Nightsoul in the party due to his various passives and constellations associated with Rescue Essentials, which grants more damage to Swirl and electrocharge damage for each point of Rescue Essentials he has. Additionally, Auroron gains multiple benefits from being in an Electro Charge comp to how he can gain Night Soul points. Basically, they're a pair of bros, both in lore and in gameplay. One thing to note is that with Aoife as a driver, you'll still want to build all other characters with a crit-based build in mind. They generally won't be triggering Electro Charge as much as Aoife is, so optimizing for personal damage will yield better team DPS overall and make better use of 4-piece VV on Aoife. Before I go into team building, I want to discuss Aoife C6 quickly, because it isn't as good as you may think just from reading it. On paper, it just seems like a straight up damage increase. Each one of your skills bullets has a chance to proc a C6 bullet. Who wouldn't want that? Problem is that each C6 activation takes animation time, and the animation time it takes eats into how many skill bullets can be fired. Pre-C6, you would be able to fire off 13 skill bullets with 0 attack speed. Post C6, you'll fire on average 11 skill bullets plus 5 or 6 C6 bullets with the same amount of attack speed. If you invest heavily into Aoife, like leveling his skill to level 12, the amount of damage increase C6 provides is extremely small. In the worst case scenario of 11 skill bullets and 5 C6 bullets, you'll only get a 66.56% motion value of attack damage increase. For reference, this is less damage than a single level 10 normal attack from Chi-Chi. While technically you do get more reactions overall with this constellation active, it's on average maybe 3 more. You're not getting that many more reactions for this constellation in his intended playstyle. And well, if we talk about his DPS playstyle, the only way you gain any major benefit from it is if you use Yunjin in the party, since she buffs every single normal attack from Aoife, independent of what the multiplier is on each of his bullets. The worst part of all of this, by the way, is that this constellation was supposed to be way more powerful than it is currently. Originally, his C6 bullet was supposed to do 20% more damage than whatever his skill would do normally. In number terms, his C6 bullet could do approximately 320% motion value of attack, which is more than double of what it is now. I suspect there were concerns that Aoife would power creep Wanderer as a 4-star DPS wise, which is why they nerfed this constellation of Aoife's, but it's extremely lame to gut a C6 of a 4-star this hard, especially when broken C6 4-star constellations exist in the game. I'm looking at you, Gaming. What the hell is the C6? Hello? Hello? Anyways, now that I've calmed down a bit, from my testing, I did find some cutoffs for how many skill bullets fire based on how many times C6 activates. As a disclaimer, these aren't necessarily 100% accurate. It may depend on distance from the enemy or hit lag ping issues or other factors I haven't confirmed. This is just a small test case scenario. The best case I've seen is firing the normal 13 skill bullets on top of 2 C6 activations. It pretty much goes downhill from there as far as I can tell. If someone has a more accurate depiction of this, or just numbers in general for this, please comment it down in the description below and I'll pin it so that everyone can have access to it. Thank you in advance. With that said, let me get into the Anemo main DPS team building. I want Jean in the party specifically due to 15% attack speed from her C2. I would have actually ditched Jean entirely if I got a 4-piece Desert Pavilion set and or C6 Yunjin, but I didn't have either, so I just went with this. For the other two teammates, I decided to throw in Faruzan and Farina. Faruzan provides a lot of buffs for Anemo DPS, especially at C6, and Farina's damage bonus could be quickly stacked with 2 healers in the party. Funny thing is that Farina's damage bonus wasn't as useful with this Abyss due to the ley line disorder increasing all Night Soul damage by 75%. So my coping mechanism for using her is that she doesn't increase Aoife's damage that much.
Stop the cap! Stop the cap right now!
Jokes aside, this is not the best way to get damage from Aoife. The core of Aoife, Yunjin, and Faruzan does a lot more, and I would have used it had I had other ways of receiving attack speed. If you would like to see this kind of team setup, Furu recently released a video showing a clear with hypercarry Aoife, and I recommend you to watch that video if you're interested in seeing how that core works. That said, I think Jean's inclusion does allow for some interesting swirl tech, and you'll see that I purposely take hits to swirl different elements to aid my clear. For the builds, Aoife is on 4-piece Codex and Skyward Atlas. I really like attack due to my team composition, so I decided on using Skyward. Faruzan was on 4-piece Emblem to increase her burst damage and give her enough ER to ult consistently with Elegy as her weapon. 4-piece Noblesse slash Tenacity of Millith would have been better for damage on Aoife, but I didn't have a good Tenacity of the Millith set for her, and Noblesse cut down her damage a bit too much for my liking. Jean was on 4-piece VB to shred Hydro Res and provide some extra swole damage with her ult, and she was on Fast Sword to help battery Farina. Finally, Farina was on 4-piece Golden Troop and Festering Desire for damage purposes. I also nerfed her HP a bit so that Jean can provide more fanfare stacks. Quickly going over my rotation plan, I start with Jean's skill to proc Favonius, swapping into Farina using her burst, and then using her skill, swapping back to Jean to use her ult, then hitting skill again. Then I go into Faruzan, pressing her skill, and then ulting. Finally, I go into Aoife and shoot with his hold skill until his Night Soul bar runs out. Once the bar is close to running out, I use his ult and then plunge after, restarting the rotation. Overall, this should take about 20 seconds to perform. Keep in mind that you'll generally want to ult with Aoife after your skill runs out, since using his ult before using his skill won't grant the 40% crit rate from Codex, as you have to use Night Soul points in order to get it. If you're using a different set, it's better to burst before using his skill to get the 100 EM from C4, if you have it of course. And with that, it's time to do some Abyss clears.
着瞧，少爷，拿去我。
想好，没门儿。
欢唱，以我之名，增之时，请指引我，一局胜负，口回压满了，天理。
走吧。好聚好散，见。
当当，让世界热闹起来吧！
Despite not doing the most amount of damage I could have with Eva, I was able to clear in time, albeit barely. I really died on the sunk cost fallacy hill with using Jean, though she did have some multiple instances of being useful. I might do a short or something showing Eva with more damage, but I'd really want Wanderers or Risley's signature weapons before doing that. Moving on to the intended playstyle, the trial team that HOYO-verse has for Eva is actually very effective in this regard. Auroron works really well with them, as I mentioned before, and Shincho and Fischl synergize really well in an Electro Charge comp. There are certainly other options, such as Anefa and or Yelan, but I don't have either of them, so 4-star comp it is. For Eva, I put him on a 4-piece BB set and Fruit of Fulfillment. I haven't seen many people consider this weapon, but I think it's pretty good for him. It gives him a decent amount of ER for his burst, as well as EM from his passive. For Auroron, 4-piece Scroll and Elegy was my choice for him. Scroll allows him to buff both Shincho and Fischl, which is extremely effective. For Shincho, he's on 4-piece Emblem and Sack Sword. Finally, for Fischl, she's on 4-piece Golden Troop and Skyward Heart, both classic builds for these two characters. Frankly, I didn't really figure out a comfortable rotation while I did Abyss, and I figured out this rotation later on. This team does have a different first rotation than subsequent ones. For the first rotation, I start with Eva's skill and auto until activating Auroron's passive, then plunging down and swapping into Shincho, using skill twice into ult, jumping to Auroron, autoing once. Then I use his skill and burst and switch to Fischl to use her skill, and then go into Eva and start attacking with his skill and hold normal attack, plunging after its duration expires. This ends the first rotation. For all subsequent rotations, I first normal with Auroron, use his skill and ult, then swap back to Eva auto once, use his burst before swapping to Shincho using skill ult. Then Fischl skill or burst depending on what rotation it is because you alternate between rotations, and then swap back to Eva to do his skill and hold normal attack, finally plunging to the end of the rotation plan. This should take around 21 to 22 seconds as you're limited by Shincho's skill's cooldown. Do forgive that my Abyss run doesn't show this rotation fairly well, but you'll hopefully see why.
总是想和我共舞的客人啊，你是木星人。
日夜唤醒，想好，没门儿。
好关注。才，再说你，你断罪，知识成景。
好聚好散，走吧。
你也想和我共舞吗？你快亲我！一只鸭，
鱼线难画，
彩光太吵了。
彩雨流红，
想好，没门儿。大之王，你的祭品已经准备好了。
日夜换线，
知识成景，
好聚好散，注意风向。
彩，鱼线难画，
去吧，你自由了。
知识成景，
你断罪。
小心为妙。
故花生意，
帮我四处看看。
黑之翼，
好聚好散。
断，知识成景，鱼线难画。
再见。来，跟大家问好。 一如小姐所
想跑，没门儿！注意风向。
古花生命，断，踩，
去吧，你自由了。
黑之翼，
小心我点。走吧。
以断罪之名，
古花生命，
放生，帮我四处看看。
无限难化，断，
地之压，
好聚好散。注意风向。
彩雨流，
别跑太远，去吧，你自由了。
踩，雨线难化，
现身吧！
想跑，没门儿！
主持成景，
来，跟大家问好，放生，
日夜唤醒。
踩，该行动了，断，
好聚好散。走吧。
寂灭之时，
To absolutely no one's surprise, Electro Charge clears pretty handily. There's multiple improvements to be made in my clears for sure, but my current gameplay was more than enough to clear this abyss. There is just one more thing to do.
走吧。
断，雨线难化，
再见。
古花生命，
注意方向。想跑，没门儿！别跑太远。
踩，雨线难化，主持成景，
地之压，
好聚好散。
古花生命，
以断罪，
走吧。再见，来，跟大家问好。想跑，没门儿！
踩，断，主持成景，
日夜唤现，
放生，帮我四处看看，小心我点。
踩，雨线难化，彩雨流，
注意方向。
一如小姐所
去吧，你自由。
Surprise! I did use this team in Stygian Onslaught at fearless difficulty, and it was able to clear. Do note that this isn't that impressive to be fair. Sucrose could do the same as Aoife here and clear this boss as well, though I'd have to build my characters up a little bit more. That said, here are the builds for both teams. I do want to revisit the Aoife main DPS team in a later Abyss, as it can do a lot of damage with different supports than I use. Though it'll likely take a while before I can get Eugene C6 for the attack speed, and Wanderer or Grizzly's mature weapons. Just imagining how strong Aoife C6 could have been does leave me wanting though. That said, I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see if I can get future underutilized characters to do Stygian. I got lucky this time due to the Cactus boss being catered towards Electro Charge. If you'd like to see the full runs, there's a link in the description down below. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.